O ina iwi hiri nei, mai haere mai, kai tēnā hui, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora everybody, Chris Gallivan is my name and welcome to 2026, 26 of the 6 of 26. There's probably something in that. And what I'm going to interpret from in that is that notwithstanding the fact that the weather is not too bad and we're sparing a thought for our whānau in Wellington at the moment, but I can see the sun shining through the windows on the wall here in the mighty Hora Whenua. And everybody who's walked through this door that I've seen, because I was one of the first here, has come in with a skip in their step. And it's really lovely to see you all, and thank you very much for your time. Before we get underway, I'm going to ask, Hayden, would you be okay to lead us in a karakia? I think everybody's here. Yeah. Thank you, Hayden. Kia ora, thanks, Hayden. I've actually just realised that Mayor Grant Smith isn't here. Have we heard from Grant, or is he joining us online? I take his apology for lateness. Look, before we start, and we could just get into the apologies, the meeting is being recorded and it will be live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. If you're a member of the public or an interested party of some sort and you are listening online, then nā mai haere mai. Welcome. The fact, in the case of emergency, we all go to the bottle store. So if you could lead us through some of the health and safety for here, then that would be appreciated.
Kia ora, welcome everybody. So in the event of an emergency, follow me. I'll be wearing this fetching pink vest. We will exit either through this door or through this door over here, and we'll meet outside the bottle store, not inside the bottle store. The bathrooms are just down the corridor to the end. In the event of an earthquake, please stay where you are. Cover either under the table or where you are. Once the shaking stops, we'll then decide what we do next. And that's it, I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grayson. We very much appreciate that. Apologies. We have apology for lateness from Mayor Grant Smith and also absent Ms. Danielle Harris. I'm sure she's enjoying herself in her business overseas at the moment. Or Danielle, I think the name tag there says that a representative of HDC, Rangatike, I think it's a RDC. It should be HDC, shouldn't it? Either way, it's good to see you. It's good to see you and good to have you here. We're very grateful for your attendance. Danielle will be here for our next meeting. Notification of additional items, we have none. Declarations of interest, I would encourage you that if any of your circumstances have changed, that you report those through to Hannah and the team. Because the public are listening in and they have the opportunity to be able to contribute as well, and Grayson will make us aware of that if that's the circumstance. Well, before we get on to the confirmation in the minutes, I just want to provide some clarity and some direction as to the order of things today. There's two real items that we're going to be discussing. The second is the easiest. That's the update from the chief executives, and we've got the executive director Chris Dyberg, who's going to present to us on that. And we've also got the SOE. Now, the SOE, the crunch day really for us to be able to decide either way as to that's whether this is our SOE, is the 7th of August. And so when we get to that, I will be moving a motion that will precursor our discussion, and that will be a recommendation only for it to be passed on to the board for their feedback. So today we're not going to be adopting anything. We don't need to be formally adopting any drafts. We don't formally need to be adopting anything with the word final in it, because that's for the 7th of August. Today we're going to have a discussion about the documents that have been sent out, both the clean version and the change version, and my intention is to then move a motion that it be referred to the board for their feedback, and we will be better for that, our discussion on the 7th, once we have that feedback. I'm acutely aware that many of us would like to discuss the trajectory of the Memorandum of Understanding, and I've heard that very loud and clear. We're not going to discuss that today. You have my personal undertaking that I will be leading a discussion where we will be in the same room and hopefully around some kai, and we can have some discussion about the trajectory and the processes and our steps forward to move that agreement document between 5 parties, including the board itself, in the very near future. I'd like to spend some time next week to come around and speak to the partners represented in this room, sort of one-on-one as groups, and then I'll look very, as soon as I possibly can, for an opportunity for us to all get together. So that's my undertaking that I give you for the MOU, but today we're here to discuss the SOE. We don't need to formally adopt anything today, but we do need to feel an element of comfort for the wording for it to then be forwarded to the board for their comment. That's my intention to how to run the two main item agendas today. Any discussion or questions or clarification on that? Thank you. Confirmation of the minutes, item 6 and 7. We've actually got 2 minutes that we need to have a look at and confirm that they're a true and accurate record of those meetings. And the first one of those is from the meeting of this committee on the 27th of March. We can find it at page 7 of the board papers, and so if members could move to that now. In terms of matters for correction or true and accurate record, I'll just paste this through. It's only 2 pages. Item 7. Is there any page 7? Is there anything on page 7? Which is the first page of those minutes from the 27th of March that needs correcting. Page 8, which is the second page, and just a couple of lines on page 9. I'll move from the chair. Do I have a seconder for the motion that they are a true and accurate record of the meeting of this committee meeting from the 27th of March 2026? Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Katie. Any discussion? You absolutely were. Yeah, you were too, and it's noted there. I hope they were helpful as far as giving you that update, Mayor Andy. All those in favour, just a show of hands or an aye. Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. The second is the minutes of the meeting of the 22nd of May 2026. Those can be found at page 11. We'll do the same. Any corrections on page 11, page 1 of those minutes? Page 2, which is page 12 of the booklet. Then the third page, which is page 13 of the booklet. Any corrections? Mayor Andy? Moved by Mayor Andy. Do I have a seconder? They're a true and accurate record of the meeting of the 22nd of May. Thank you, Councillor Jennings. Sam? All those, any discussion? All those in favour? Passed unanimously. Thank you, team. Item 8, the draft of the Statement of Expectation. probably go for a start with the wording of the motion that I'll seek to move. I will move from the chair and seek a seconder after this item is discussed. And it is a recommendation of the Joint Shareholders Committee that the committee send attachment 1 to which is the SOE, to the Central District's Water Board for comment. So it's fairly to the point. Mayor Andy,
I'll be happy to second.
thank you. Well, look, how about I move that is the motion. I get it seconded. Thank you, Mayor Andy, and then we can open up for discussion, or we can work our way through it. So I move that the committee send attachment 1 to the Central District's Water Board for comment. It's already noted there, but Mayor Andy, I'm going to take that you have second, and then we'll open up for discussion just in a moment after I have introduced it. Thank you so much for all of your work, and in particular the small drafting committee that was put together after the last full committee meeting. Dave Wilson was there, Councillor Sam Jennings was there, Hayden Turo was there, and Katie was there as well, and everybody was outstanding while we sat around online actually working through clause by clause to wordsmith it. The documentation that I sent out, I think it was on the 10th of June, consisted of a clean copy and a track change copy, so everybody had ease of navigation, so they didn't have to go and get the old version 2 and try and figure out where the changes were. You could see them there. And in the intervening days, there was some really helpful discussion that was held, I think, by all partners, and some feedback that came in. And I collated that feedback and then put another draft together. That included some. I wanted early eyes of the lawyers across what we were looking at, and they come back with some feedback. Some of it very, very, very minor changing of individual words that I don't suggest there are any difficulty, but they did provide feedback on clause 6 and 7 in particular, which is the duration of the SOE. Under legislation, the duration needs to be 10 years. Our discussion had got to the stage that we had all recognised that we're in a slightly different position than the other published SOEs for their entities, in that we have a year establishment prior to our date. Our date of operation is the 1st of July 2027. So we've got a lot of work. Even the chief executive hasn't not been appointed yet. We've got a lot of work between now and the 1st of July 2027. And what is the statement of expectation in practical terms will look like for that period is relatively concise compared to what the statement of expectation for the enduring expectations beyond July 2027. And we, as a committee, had decided that we thought it might be best to have a break point after 12 months. The lawyers said, look, it needs to be for 10 years, but it can be a requirement of a formal review every year. So what I've put together is an alternative wording that acknowledges the fact that the legislative requirement is for a 10-year duration, but actually requires this committee to review it every year. And I've also got in there that does not prohibit the ability of this committee to review it in between annual reviews. Those annual reviews don't necessarily need to be huge undertakings. And in fact, after a couple of years, they might be relatively minor tweaking. But they are available there for us to, if we want, to the extent, reinvent the statement of expectation in consultation with the board. So that's one big thing I draw to your attention. The other is what I think is an incredibly helpful clarity that was led by Katie with Palmerston North City Council, and that revolves around the reporting and then the performance measures. Now, the reporting really focuses on that establishment period. The performance measures are what we're going to, as a committee, hold company, the board and the company's feet to the fire on a longer term basis. Now, the reporting measures, as they had been in version 2, needed tidying. They needed tidying because there were some elements in there that spoke more of an ongoing performance measure than it did actually a reporting in the in the establishment phase. And we as a drafting committee had put a couple of little pen marks there, but Katie had undertaken to go away and talk to her team and come up with what I thought is some really good clarity, which I then was able to cut and paste and bring into the what I'm calling now version 4 that you have in front of you, which just creates a little bit of daylight and a bit of clear understanding between the reporting between now and the 1st of July 2027 and actually the performance measures. Now, the performance measures, my final point before we open it up for discussion, the performance measures, we have recognised that we had the ability to be able to draft those, or we could empower the board to come back as part of its water services strategy, WSS, that it needs to do and bring a draft back to us before the end of this calendar year, and it needs to be signed off before the 1st of July 2027. That water services strategy is a really important document, and it will be informed by the board, by this SOE, and by the water services development plan and a whole bunch of other plans, the individual plans and the LTPs of the councils. A lot of the documentation that Ngā Tapawaia Hau Mana Whenua are engaged with, obligations under Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the Treaty of Waitangi, for example. All of those things will be brought to bear in a comprehensive water services strategy. And as part of that, there will be their proposal of the performance measures that we ought to use to hold their feet to the fire. Does that make sense? And what we have believed, and why we as a committee have said that the board is best placed to come up with those performance measures, was simply a recognition of the fact that they will soon be in the position of being aware of all of the moving parts, even more than us as the committee, and they are best placed as a helicopter view to see what and how things fit together with a performance regime. The wording that we've put in there, I think it's now the new clause 44E, is that's a little bit special, that provision, and about performance measures. It's a special part of the water services strategy that needs to come back to us for consultation and input. But we've actually upped the ante a little bit with, at least the proposal is under 44E, and said, board, we'd like you to come up with some performance measures. We'd like you actually to work with us on the development of those performance measures, because ultimately they will be our performance measures that we hold the board to account for and want them to report against in the future years to come. So we've got a really strong interest, not only in the water services strategy, but in what those performance measures look like. And so I'm confident, and we can have some discussion, that we will have very clear line of sight and very significant input into the development of those in conjunction with the board. I think, from my perspective, those are the overarching sort of key takeaways. I don't think that there is anything that is a lightning rod or a point of contention in terms of other aspects, but I will open it up now for discussion, hopefully tracking towards that resolution of an agreement for the referral of this SOE, or attachment 1 as it's referred to in the motion that's been moved and seconded, to the board for their feedback, for it all again to come back to us for discussion of whether we're going to adopt it on the 7th of August. Any points of clarification before I open it up for discussion? Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, open to comment. You might want to be looking, and we've got it all ready here. We've got both the clean copy and the track change copy before us, and I would encourage and welcome anybody to make any comments or bring anything for discussion that you may wish. Dave.
I'll kickstart us off. I'll kickstart us off there. I think you've articulated particularly well the online meeting that the full members, Hayden, Katie, myself, and Sam attended, and I think that's been well captured, particularly for the other members that weren't here. I particularly like the reference there to 44E that you mentioned, because it was one of the things that I had a concern with, that understanding what the performance measures were, and the fact that we will have some input and discussion into those performance measures, because it is us as a body, being the shareholder committee, that need to articulate those measures back to the people that we represent as a shareholding body. So I'm particularly happy with the added wording of that. So that would be my reference comment. And Katie, I know you did a lot of work in bringing some of our loose thinking of an online discussion into something that was more palatable into words, but I think you captured it well, so thank you for your work in that space.
Thanks, Dave. I mean, Katie was, in addition to that, was absolutely instrumental with the structure of the local content paragraphs, and that was very much her construction, and so therefore you can see there's quite some consistency between all four partners in terms of that local content, and I think it sits really nicely in the context of the SOE as a whole. Colleagues, anybody else? Katie? We might have some others that are signed out as well. Mayor Grant-Smith, welcome. Good to see you.
Very good.
Eddie.
Well, thank you. I think you've summarised the changes really well, and I found this to be a really collaborative process, which has been really satisfying. And I think that, I'm really grateful that there's been some support for the performance measures, or tightening them up, or being a bit more clear about what those could look like. I think PNCC is really pleased that we could get those included in some form or other, and I think because they are focused on the establishment year and what kind of reporting we'd like to see against the establishment milestones. From my perspective, I'm sure my mayor can corroborate, our elected members would have great confidence in this document. We've had good feedback, and they're really pleased to see that there's some appetite for including those. So thank everyone for what's been a very constructive process at putting quite a complicated piece of work together.
Thanks, Katie. That 44E, I think the genius there is in collaboration with the committee. And the fact is that, particularly for those who are online, my role is independent, non-voting chair. That means that I am this committee's champion. And that means that I will be leading a lot of that, proactively leading that discussion with the board to ensure that this committee has a voice in the exercise of in collaboration with the committee. Colleagues, any other points that people would like to raise? Mayor Andy.
Yeah, absolute congratulations for that working group, and I followed all the track changes, and absolutely, Katie, congratulations, because a huge number of track changes are attributed to you. So, job very well done.
Mayor Burney.
Can I too acknowledge those that have been party to this, and I know that my table is comfortable in the process, and having seen what is eventuated and is really has endorsed completely what the statement was done. I suppose the only sort of query that I had was a little bit about the customer charter and what that looks like and how that's developed, and are we duplicating things a little bit. And so I'd probably need to just understand more what that looks like and how it's developed, I suppose, is probably where I'm sitting, because along with a number of other documents and governance documents, it seems to be, I don't know whether we're just conflating everything and sort of, so specifically around the establishment expectations and that clause 42 and A, B, C and D.
I'll start for a start of 10, but I encourage any colleagues to be able to contribute as well. Just a brief recap of the trajectory. We had a version 1 that I put out in conjunction with the lawyers, which was a skeletal overview of what, and it was an amalgamation of the couple other SOEs of its type that have been made publicly available in the country. Version 1 was very much more closely aligned with this version 4 in terms of the customer charter. There's actually a legislative requirement that the new company, Central Districts Water, have a customer charter. So there's actually legislative framework there. In the version 2, I had adopted similar wording in the SOE, and it was my adoption of it, that was similar wording to 44E with the performance measures we just spoke to. It was merely just adopted the cap to the fact that there was a legislative requirement and empowering the board to come back to us with a suitable customer charter. But in our last discussion, it was felt that there would be more comfort from the partners around the table here in the committee that if there'd be some more framing up of what that customer charter would look like in the SOE, notwithstanding the fact that it might be in part doubling up. And I think we're all quite from my extensive now discussion with everybody sort of offline, we have and so does the board, a high level of comfort with the fact that there might be some elements of this that double up with legislative requirements. Why? Because it's the first one. It's brand new. And in some points, and the customer charter is one of those, we're shying on being safe and being helpful for the board to set it up for success by framing up some of our expectations that it will read. Our intention is that the board will interpret those in conjunction with its legislative requirements. So I'm really confident that in combination with the legislation and with the framing up of some of the points that we've made here as to what a customer charter from our purpose ought to touch on, that we're going to get a really quality product of a recommendation it will be adopted by, it's not our document, it will be adopted by CDW, but it will be brought back to us for comment and feedback. So that's probably in a nutshell, Mayor Bernie, my answer to your question. Also, bringing what might be members of the public on board with how we've got to where we are with a slightly teased out wording. Katie, you've not said anything. You have now, because I know that you were sort of the chief architect of bringing some of that wording from version 1, skipping version 2, and then back into now the version 4. Any comments?
Yes, happy to. I take your point, absolutely. I think what was the point of difference with the customer charter was, to me, it seemed not so much it's a comms exercise as well as a framework. So that's the outward facing bit for the community to let them know how they can interact with the new entity and have it real spelled out as they are making that transition. But I think RDC had also made the point that they would like to see some public education about how that transition was going to work. So we tried to capture that here, but it also so that's the actively promote aspect that's in there. But I also do think this could be a good thing to draw the board's attention to and get their specific feedback on as part of this next step, is whether they think that's pitched right or whether there is too much duplication for that to be useful.
Mayor David Wilson.
Yeah, just to support that, part of that conversation was showing transparency in our communications, that there is a line via the charter for our people to engage, and that was one of the strengths. That's why we wanted it to be shown quite strong.
look, again, my thanks to Councillor Zabellin and the Palmerston North team, because I think what we've been able to do is provide that transparency, as Dave has just outlined. But in the last version 3, that component of education that RDC had brought to the table but was endorsed by everybody, it sort of just sat out by itself. There wasn't really anything around it. And I think what Katie and the team at PNCC have done really well is that they've given that a home and they've bedded it with some clarity as to how it might fit in with provisions that fly in formation with it, and I think it's found its home rightly in that customer charter. So, any other discussion on that, or any new points, colleagues? Sam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just firstly to say, Mayor Smith, you're very lucky to have Councillor Zabellin around your table, and we're very fortunate to have her around this table because she has been absolutely exceptional through this process, and I've found her very collaborative and just great at this particular task, and we are the better for it. And also just to acknowledge the contributions of Hayden and Dave in terms of their pragmatic contributions to that online conversation. It was a really good process, and so as delegates on this shareholders committee, Bernie and I obviously have had some instructions and discussions with our elected member table. There is absolute broad confidence in where this document has landed, and so we absolutely support the motion that's on the table. You've obviously, Mr. Chair, you've talked about the MOU, and that was only something that our table had raised around wanting to have that conversation around the scope and the purpose and the relationship of the MOU to the SOE, and so where things have landed in terms of the motion, allowing us to get on and get that feedback from the board makes a whole lot of sense, acknowledging that there's going to be that ability and space to have that conversation, and we really welcome that to continue that kind of collaborative approach to all of these documents and all of these different steps in terms of the establishment and transition. So just want to thank everyone around the table for their willingness and openness to take this approach.
Thanks, Sam. Conversation's good, and the more that it can happen face to face and preferably over some kind, the better. Di, did I see you wanted to say something too? Di.
You're on now.
Kia ora, thank you. I just want to add total call for the comments around the amazing, stunning work of the subcommittee. Hayden, Katie, Dave, to get us to this point. Thank you so much. And as Sam said, to the efforts that have brought us all together here. Just to ensure this is as current as possible, given the vote, the recommendation going forward today. It's a very, very small point, but the very recently adopted name on page 23, actually clause 23, to add to that paragraph would be Te Pai o Tararua, bracket, O2NL. Thanks.
Thanks, Di. Sam?
Yes. Mr. Chair, that's just to acknowledge that is absolutely an oversight on my part. I think when we first drafted up the local statement, that was before the formal announcement, so I just haven't kept up with development. So absolutely, from an HD perspective, absolutely support that that update.
Great. We'll make sure that happens, Di. I don't want to rush anybody. This is an important document, and our next step is to refer it, as we know, and the clean copy will be referred, not the track change copy, to the board for their discussion, and they just might have points of clarification. I'm confident they're going to have no sort of hard nose, or but they might have like to know how this clause interacts with this clause, And I think that will set us up well in conjunction with other conversations we most definitely will have. We want to set ourselves up for success, not only the board. But I don't want to rush it today. Is there any other discussions or comments on any of the points of the document before you? We have thank you, colleagues. We have a motion that has been moved by me and seconded by Mayor Andy Watson, and that is that the committee send attachment 1, which is the SOE, to the Central District's Water Board for comment. It's not adopting, it's got no final, it's got no draft in it, it's just forwarding it to them for comment, and it will return to us for discussion and approval or otherwise on the 7th of August. All those in favour of that motion? Hands? Unanimous. Thank you, colleagues. I very much appreciate that. Item 9. Chris Dyberg. The transition update from Chief Executives. Welcome. Good to see you.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Apologies for lateness, but just before we get into Chris's report, shouldn't the board come back to us with their comments around the shareholders agreement?
Yes, they will.
Okay. Just your commentary was like it was a fait accompli, so they will come back to you.
Yes, they will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just checking that. Thank you.
I'm anticipating that. I'm hoping that they will come back to us by mid-July. I'll be able to collate all of that. I'll then be able to discuss with all members here about what the nature of that is. Some of it might be very technical and it'd be easily able to sign off. If I sort of get agreement with the discussion in the background is perhaps, for example, a small group that's similar to the wordsmithing group to be able to pen what might be some clarification or the paper in preparation for this board to consider, then that would be put together by me and them and then brought back to here. Yeah, this all of the comments from the board will come back to this committee. I run a completely transparent show. You know, there's nothing that's going to come to me that if on the request that you want to see, if I haven't proactively put it out, that is not going to be that will be kept from you, and there's no intention for that in terms of that process either. Hayden?
Yeah, I heard in the resolution that was pretty clearly articulated, so I don't think that you needed to qualify. And the process that you've led us through has been exceptional, and it's led us to a unanimous decision today. So, yeah, just wanted to meet you.
Thank you. Chris, over to you.
Kia ora koutou. Lovely to be here as always. Maybe if I can just comment on that last conversation and just give you a bit of a heads up about how the process will work on the other side of the table. So the team already is going through just developing a document for the board just to give them some analysis of what's in the statement. We've assumed the document that was coming today would be pretty close. So and we'll just provide them some analysis and say this is what's in it and anything that you should be aware of and what have you. And that will go to the board at the next meeting on the 16th of July. And what we're hoping is to be able to turn around from that 16th of July meeting very quickly, an acknowledgement and any feedback or questions that the board might have. So, but we'll just have to wait until we've gone through that and get their direction on that. But I understand, the timeframes. So we'll be endeavouring to sort of, have time so that it all can come back and get signed off within the timeframes you're anticipating. And that's important for CDW as well because, of course, it's a critical input into the water services strategy, and we need to be able to articulate in the water services strategy how the organisation will respond or meet the requirements of the statement of expectation. Okay, just to let you know, in the room we've also got quite a few of the establishment team that joined me today. If we and I won't introduce them now, but if they come up, we'll obviously introduce them. So what I thought I'd do is just take literally 2 minutes just to talk to a couple of items that are just in the pack, and then knowing that you would have all read the pack, we can go touch on any questions that you might have, and if needed, I'll drag the team up to talk to any detail. Thanks again. There's a couple of things in here that were responses to questions that came up last meeting, but just at a very high level, there's only a couple of things I was going to talk to. First of all, just in terms of the program, and most of you will be aware, but there was a major milestone yesterday at the Rangitikei District Council where approved the entering into of the deed of support for Central Justice Water. That followed significant meetings on Wednesday with first here in Horowhenua and then in Palmerston North, where the other two councils signed it off. Real major milestone. What that allows is the rest of the establishment program effectively to be funded through separate funding that Central District Water will be able to get. That takes the burden of funding the next step off the councils. Second thing I was just going to note, since our last meeting, the board have approved the work program for the delivery of digital systems, and it is a very aggressive program, but that is underway in work at the moment in terms of the procurement and going through the decisions around exactly what flavour of systems that will be done. There was some really good questions at a number of the council meetings asking about, including you, Councillor Wilson, about were we confident that we had enough time to do this? And I thought very perceptive question, and that's why we're going really fast. The more time we've got, the more chance of success. So anyway, that's underway. That's really that's very useful. The other thing I thought I'd note, just by way of really good news, is that we had an opportunity come up a couple of weeks ago from the DIA, who are shutting down their part of Local Water Done Well at the end of the month, and that will then transition to the new ministry. And they had a bit of money left over, and were prepared to look at proposals for funding things that might help solve problems for the sector. So we quickly put in a proposal around getting some external help for us to build a fit for purpose capital delivery system, and so we've secured $150,000. That's really great. That's money that we won't have, the Central Justice Water won't have to find, and as I know you'll appreciate, the delivery of big capital programs, and what is going to be a growing capital program is going to be a major challenge. So all the help we can get is appreciated. The last thing I just wanted to just call out was item 8. So what I've done after I think it was the question from you, Councillor Jennings, just about wanting to see on one page where all the governance sat and who was making the decisions and who was overseeing what. So item 8 is a sort of the one page. It's a very busy slide. It's a quite small font. Sorry about that, but there's a lot to get on, and I think when you look at that one page, you get an appreciation of all the different layers and the different roles. And I've had a lot of input on that. The chief executives have helped provide some input. I managed to get some input from Danielle Harris when she was overseas as well, just in terms of making sure it articulated appropriately the role of Tapuaho as well. So happy to take any questions.
Mayor Andy.
Yeah, thank you very much. My question is around a little bit of process here, and the plethora of lawyers in the room will be able to advise me. So the 3 councils have made a series of decisions within council, and absolutely correct process there. But in terms of transferring that position to this entity, because when you start talking about guarantees, etc., or guarantor positions, and you go to a funding agency, it would be useful in my mind that there is a process that transfers the decisions from council, recognises them here, so that you can act on them. And I just wonder if there's a procedural gap there. There's also going to be situations where things are developed in committee within councils, which then need a process to be able to take them to shareholders committees, etc. And absolutely strike me down if I'm out of order here, but I wonder if there's a process that we need to refine. Interested in the views.
Yeah, interesting question. And I might need to reflect on it a little bit more. I think, Mayor Andy, I think most of it, I'm feeling comfortable that most of it should be covered off, and it's really the process that we went through collectively around the foundational documents, and in particular the Constitution and the Shareholders Agreement, already sort of sets a lot of that up. So that if you go back, for instance, looking at, say, guarantees and how they work, if you go back and look at the Shareholders Agreement, there's already in there, the respective roles and responsibilities. And I don't think there's anything missing in terms of making those, including all of the stuff that we've just gone through recently. It was all feeling very well already set up in those documents. So what we have been doing across the three councils now is sort of the other side of that. So the framework's set up, the requirements are set up in those documents, and then what we've done is just basically completed the things that are anticipated in the shareholders agreement. But it's a very good question. I think probably something that maybe I'll take back and reflect on, and in particular is that question about the flow of things from councils back through to this committee.
Further to that, if, for instance, there's a Lagoima request on the shareholders committee or the entity around what rights did they have to be able to access funds or guarantor positions, that's part of my thinking as to there has to be some sort of phase here. And perhaps we could get some further advice if it is needed.
Chris, you've indicated that you might need to do a bit of thinking about that. We'd encourage you to come back to us in intervening times.
So we'll capture the question, and I think I'm feeling reasonably confident that I sort of know the answer in terms of referring back to those foundational documents. But let me just go away, and I'll come back, and rather than make it up on the spot, I'd sooner go away and have a bit of a look at it, if that's okay.
Better to be complete than to be quick. Yeah. All good. Mayor Smith.
Is that on? Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. All right. Good. Thanks, Sam. Just the work in progress stuff. A couple of questions there, Chris. So the intranet go live and all those internal comms. Just can you perhaps extrapolate that a little bit more? So is there an intranet all set up? So all our staff sort of know between all the staff between the three entities. Is there a bit of comms going on in the background?
Yeah. Thanks, Mayor Grant. There's a and unfortunately probably the key person for that is Olivia, who's not just here, but the comms work stream in particular is a big part of that is around keeping our people informed. A lot of those communications from particularly from the board and post-board meetings and what have you, keep them being funneled through the chief executive, because obviously the people still are employed by the three councils. So there's a lot of work going on there. Around the intranet. So I think you've picked up on that point. So at the moment, of course, we've got the internet site itself, which is for external. But the idea is that we do have an intranet that the staff early on can get access to, and what that would allow them to do is to go directly into there. It's a site that only the staff can get access to, and they can find out more information, and so that's part of the comms working with the digital team around getting that stood up and making that space available.
So there'll be two workflows. There'll be an internal workflow for internal comms, and then there'll obviously be something that will be external as well. Yeah. And when do the staff sort of get an understanding of exactly who comes across all that sort of? Is there a date for that yet? Or?
Sarah, do you want to come and talk to that? I'll just get Sarah Morris coming up. Sarah is the workstream lead for people, and she's been working pretty closely on this one, so it's probably better just for me to let her talk to it. Yeah, maybe just use this one.
Kia ora, Sarah Morris, as Chris has said, People Workstream Lead. So we have a couple of things happening at the moment. We have a workshop with your 3 chief executives in a couple of weeks to confirm the comms plan around the staff transfer, which is what really impacts our people. From that, then we'll get into some what I call more detailed comms for them. So at the moment, we haven't really had anything we could talk about from a staff perspective. It's been about the structure of the organisation. But mid-July, you'll start to see more active engagement with the staff, slightly differing channels depending on whether you're a waters person or you're potentially part of your role is going, for example. Then we'll lay out the process of staff transfer, how they're looked after, all that sort of thing, but you won't see that for a couple more weeks.
Okay. And just second question, if I may, Chair, around the establishment IT costs, a little bit, is there any more detail? We've got a budget there. You've obviously worked up a budget because you've sort of got a high level understanding or estimate of where that might go. Is there any more detail that you can tell the council here around? It's a big number, and I'll have to say it wasn't unanimous around our table, probably because of lack of understanding of what you're actually going to do. Is there any more you can tell us at this stage or not?
Well, I can talk sort of at a high level. I prefer not to get into the specific numbers because that's when it starts getting a little bit commercially sensitive. As you can imagine, we're in the starting some negotiations with vendors and what have you. So I think at a high level, this is a number that's in the public domain because it's was part of the plan. As we sort of dig into it, how that's split up. Like I said, there's a number in there for implementation costs that we would spend with vendors, but what that covers, there's a few things that are within that. So obviously there might be, let's say we're implementing a digital system. There's what you would pay a vendor for that implement cost. There's the cost of the team that you put together to run through the other side of it. So our people doing getting it set up and transferring data into it and doing the configuration. That number also includes things like setting up the organisation for laptops and digital tools. So there's about half a dozen, and I don't have them on me right now, but there's it covers quite a lot of stuff in there.
And are we bearing in mind there's 30 of these entities being set up all over the place, and I realise we're probably slightly ahead of in the pack. Are we actively talking to others, like to try and get a scale deal?
Yeah, great question. And again, there's not a lot I can sort of say because there's some sort of commercially sensitive discussions going on, but I can assure you that that's a big part of what we're doing at the moment. And because you're dead right, there are definitely opportunities. I think I've spoken before about the general overall digital system strategy is to use the same systems wherever we can. So across the sector, we can be if we're all on the same systems and configured in the same way, it brings up huge opportunities for either sharing the same systems or at least having shared services and to operating it. So yeah,
that's a big part of the strategy.
And my final question, timeline. Any rough timeline? I mean, you'll obviously be testing and making sure the billing system works across our 3 databases of customers and connections.
So just off the top of my head, I don't have all the details in my brain, but basically there's sort of there's slightly different time frames depending on the type of system. So one of the pillars would be around, let's say, operational things for staff. So this is stuff that you use every day, and that can happen pretty quick because we're talking about Microsoft 365 sort of licenses and all those sort of things that happens pretty quickly. They're sort of the core, what they call the sort of systems of record, which are sort of the finance and asset management and stuff like that. They're on a longer time frame, and the idea is that we're kicking off the actual implementation sort of probably circa August, so it's quite quick. We're getting to that point, and then if we use, I think Waikato Waters, they've gone through effectively the same process. It took about 5 months. So, you can see we're talking about having systems sort of ready for the testing and the trialing sort of early in the new year. What that gives us the ability, because, we're talking potentially completely new systems that the staff haven't used before. So the sort of the change management elements of it are really, really important. So we need to training and the testing and all that sort of stuff, and making sure that by the time people get to day one, they're comfortable. The one that's the biggest is the biggest concern just is around the billing. So again, want to kick that off very quickly. I think what I've said previously, we need to make a decision by October exactly which way we're going on that. We're investigating absolutely the idea of having a system and billing directly out of Central Water, but if that proves not to be viable, we'll have to go to a plan B and work with councils.
Okay, I hope it's going to be plan A. Thank you.
So do we.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. Hayden?
Kia ora. Yep. Cheers for the report, and I note that there is a fairly comprehensive work stream for the internal engagement, which is important because their change management and bringing our people on the journey and getting people through that uncertainty is really important. Alongside that, there's also a really strong, in our draft, the expectation statement anyway, there is a strong relationship expectation, and that's, it's well articulated, I guess, and then I just draw you to page 61, the communication and engagement, and the current activities beyond a tour of the board, and it says bringing in the media. I wonder what is our capacity and capability, and noting that with relationship expectation, a lot of the communities that we'll want to get ahead of and in front of will appreciate that face-to-face engagement, and just thinking through a really robust engagement work stream, and how that some of those engagements will look very different and in different types of venues, and just wondering what's our capacity and capability in that space in the team currently, and then does kind of that next focus, those 3 bullet points, does that potentially need to be expanded on into quite a comprehensive work stream so that we can understand that at a glance as well?
Kia ora, Hayden. That's a great question, and it would be answered really well by Olivia. Unfortunately, she isn't here, so that she's the workstream lead for communications and engagement, and she's got a very comprehensive plan, and a lot of it is around the engagement elements and how we start engaging with the community. I guess if you sort of think about what success looks like, and success, day 1 July 2027 is that we've established a relationship with all of our communities and partners and stakeholders, and there's comfort and trust around Central District School have been able to do a job appropriately. So Olivia's got quite a detailed plan around that, and she's also taking to the board this month some communications and engagement strategy for them to review with the board. But I think your point's very well made. It's going to be really important for us to have tailored engagement with the different communities in a way that works for them. And because look, you can see some organisations might put their name on the back of a bus. I think, and we might want to do some direct engagement, but I think that, like you say, that direct engagement face to face with people, being able to ask their questions and let them look you in the eye is going to be critical. So, it'll be very varied.
Thank you. My screen keeps on shuffling everybody's order around, but I think Katie was first, and then can I come to you, Mayor Bernie? Katie?
I think this indicates that I was first.
I know it does, but on my screen it's swapped you two around. It's swapped you two around three
In this
times.
room, I have preference.
Yeah, Mayor Bernie, we would love to come to you, Mayor Bernie.
Even Katie recognised it. You're welcome to go start, Katie.
I'll do as I'm directed by the chair. I had a couple of questions about the transfer agreement section in there. It noted that the stormwater workshop was delayed and that there were templates to be provided. At the time of writing, has that progressed since then?
Yes, thank you. At the time of writing, I sort of thought, it was right on the cusp, but yes, the stormwater workshop went ahead and the templates happened. It was good to get the stormwater one done. It's a really it's the most complicated of all of them, to be fair, in terms of getting that stuff right. So that's happens, and so all those initial workshops happened and have and I think now the three councils are busily working on developing their lists, I guess. So there's a lot, but there is a huge amount of work still to do.
Yeah, thank you. So that was my next question. It notes there that the transfer schedules need to be completed in draft and then initially signed off by the CEs by the 31st of August. So noting that we had meetings on the 7th of August and then the 4th of September, is that our opportunity to get some visibility on how that's progressing? It seems like quite a short time frame to do, as you say, quite a lot of complicated sorting out.
So it is the biggest piece of work, I think, and I think I think one of the things with that you can have some comfort in is that there was a lot of work done previously under the previous iteration of this. So we're sort of not starting from a blank page. I guess that from a stormwater perspective, one of the things that had happened is sort of looking at the principles of the transfer. I think that was one where you really need to say, well, what are the principles around stormwater that we're all going to agree on, and then go away. So some of it is sort of starting, a bit of work that hasn't been done, but some of it is probably reviewing and validating. So look, we'll make sure that we keep updated on the progress, and you can be assured that it's probably the piece of, and I know all the three chief executives are very focused on keeping across this. Each of the organisations is appointing internal leads for this work to keep track of it. So
great, thank you. And then as the current time frame says that the board would be adopting or aiming to adopt transfer agreements, or whoever's adopting them, in December, and it's not on our work schedule for the December meeting. I just wondered what's the time frame. We're set to meet on the 4th of December, I think. Are we aiming to adopt before or after that? And how does that intersect with our December meeting?
I'd have to go back and double check, but I guess so. Remember that the transfer agreements actually become operative on 1 July 27. So what we're trying to do is to get all the work pretty much done and dusted by the end of the calendar year, and that allows plenty of space for not having to be scrambling around this stuff later. Look, I'd have to go and double check, but I think the idea would be to use this forum to help people understand that. But remember, this is the one where each individual council has to do their transfer agreement. So probably the critical sort of governance is back into the individual councils as opposed to here. But I think what probably this forum's role is to keep oversight of how it's all going. Is it on track? Are there any but certainly the actual getting visible. So you wouldn't bring the schedules here to have a look at.
Sure. Great. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Me, Bernie, Andy's tried to jump the queue, but I like you, and I've got your back.
I absolutely. No, you go for it. Go for it.
You're on.
All right. My question is around sensitivity of information, and as chair, I contacted you the other day around what should be in committee at our council, and obviously the three councils need to be aligned in those sorts of decisions. But when we start talking about transference of staff, property use, they have high implications to staff, and there's a huge amount of sensitivity. What's the process that we're going to follow around deciding collectively what is in committee and what is not?
I think where those conversations will certainly start is with the chief executives around that's still a really critical forum, the PSG, and I think those sort of questions are probably where they probably will start is around the chief executives, and we can have that conversation around what we think the issues are and how do we and you can be assured that three chief executives keep us pretty honest on those sort of things and I think that works pretty good. So everything that's sort of coming here basically would have previously been discussed at the PSG.
Me, Bernie.
Thank you, Chair. Chris, just a couple of things from me, and particularly in relation to the issues and challenges that you've signalled, but especially in the establishment program, the item 3, in terms of conflicting priorities, and what does that actually mean? And then on the item 7, the water services strategy, and the challenges and issues around the time frame for completing the strategy and the potential delay to the statement of expectations. Just wondering whether you could just expand and maybe what are the risks in terms of those sorts of issues?
Thanks, Bernie. It's a very good question, and it is probably for me. It's if there's something that sort of keeps me up at night, it's this conflicting priorities issue. And I guess to explain what I mean by that, it's sort of code for everyone's really, really busy. And if I look at each of the councils, this is not the only thing you've got going on, right? So you're an LTP year coming up. You've got every 5 minutes a grenade gets hurled from central government around something else that's going to take your focus and what have you. I don't think anyone's got people sitting on the bench waiting to get a call up to take on another job. So every time we go to your people and we say, hey, we've got this really urgent thing that you need to be working on, it is a challenge, right? So look, I think the great thing is that, in with the chief executives through the PSG, we're having exactly this conversation, and I think everyone is all on board and feeling accountable for the success of the process and what have you. So it's not about will or not being on board with the program, and it's just the fact that we've got people being, we're pushing them pretty hard. So what do we do about that? And I think it is, well, first of all, you recognise that. And we have conversations about resourcing and how we actually are going to resource, and sometimes that is, well, actually we don't have capacity, so we we might need to look at bringing in some help with that. If you to your other question, so water services strategy, so that's a piece of work, and luckily we got Helen Churton here, who is the program lead for that. So I can always get her up here to sort of talk about that if necessary. But just as a general point, there's a lot of work to be done, and that particularly requires things like working on the prioritisation and that leads into a sort of investment plan for capital, and that requires a lot of input from staff as well. But one of the decisions that we made 2 or 3 months ago now was to bring some help in. So we've done a contract with Becca to provide sort of engineering and help and support around that, and they've been really great. So we've been able to lean on them to help with fast tracking the design of the process and the support that it needs, and we can get them to do a bit of work if we need to. So that's how we manage that. But to be fair, there is those timeframes are tight. I guess because what we want to do is to align the sort of the final draft of the water services strategy for the end of the calendar year, which means we can then go out and consult with the community alongside the consultations with the long-term plans. We think that's the right thing to do because the community can see them all together. The plan B is if everything goes horribly wrong, we're having to delay it. We might just get a disconnected consultation process, which wouldn't be ideal. If you look at some of the other ones that are going live in a week, their consultation has been quite recently. They've only been out in the last sort of couple of months, so they've had to do it. Having said that, their shareholding councils weren't out consulting on their LTP, but so those are just the things that we're juggling.
Sounds like next April, May is going to be pretty a heavy consultation period if we're consulting on a long-term plan, CDW, and possibly amalgamation at the same time. We're expecting a heck of a lot of our community in terms of doing it, and I don't want to see, I suppose, things lose their right place in terms of the importance of what's going on, because there's some pretty significant decisions to be made, obviously. So I suppose trying to align all that sort of thing is going to be pretty critical for us as councils to be able to try and do that. And I see quite a bit of a challenge and a risk in terms of that all happening at once. That's all.
Sam.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And just not prolong things too long, but just a comment and then a question. Chris, thanks to you and the team for putting the roles and responsibilities table together. I think that's been really useful for me. I think it shows, it has kind of revealed some potential overlaps or potentials for overlaps at some point, and I guess it emphasises that there will need to be, for some tasks or work streams, the sequencing is going to be important in terms of who does it go to first, or how do you navigate that. So it's been useful from that perspective. I just wanted to touch on some commentary on the transfer agreement, and then also in the establishment talking about CDW getting its own lawyers. The world can't exist without lawyers, so it's good to see CDW is getting their own lawyers, or starting the process too. But can you just talk to me around, again, because the shareholder committee is not going to have an active role in relation to the transfer agreement process, because that's a council-led. So hearing what Councillor Zavalin talked about in terms of that oversight in terms of process, but the actual transfer agreement decision-making process is at an individual council level, but then that comes into a consolidated structure, and then presumably from a legal perspective, there's a transaction where the councils are saying to CDW, this is what we're proposing as inside collectively, the transfer agreement, and CDW's lawyers are saying, well, we'll just check that makes sense. Is that how? Am I understanding how that's going to work from a practical side of things, or is it still intended for it to be very collaborative and that it's one lawyer doing the whole lot of work?
Great question. Funny you should ask that. Yeah, look, the intent definitely is to try and do this as collaboratively as possible. So, so we're still using Simpson Grierson as our sort of chief advisors around the transfer agreement. All these workshops have been happening has been done collectively across the three council teams. A lot of it's been led by the Simpson Grierson team, who've been incredibly helpful with that. I think a good process would be is that as we go through this, and you look at the principles that we've talked about, and it is sort of everything. It's sort of principles of fairness, and that everyone can look at it and say, well, it doesn't feel like anyone's getting inappropriately advantaged over another one. So if we can sort of keep to those principles and it runs smoothly, quite frankly, there's no extra lawyers that necessarily have to come in. And certainly around this principle we've been running with the debt transfer principles and all of that that's run, and that's run really well so far. And in fact, all three councils and the board have signed that off on the basis of effectively the advice that's been provided by Simpson Grierson. So it's demonstrated how that could work. I guess when talk about external lawyers for Central Districts Water, that was really on the basis of, because these are effectively transactions between a council and Central Districts Water, this is the meat of the sandwich, right? So this is the big things that you can see some of the news around the country where some of those transfer agreements, people have raised a bit of an eyebrow and said, really? So I guess what we're saying, there is the potential there for one of the parties, say the councils or Central Districts Water, wanting to get its own advice around its own specific position. So that's difficult when you've got this big collaborative thing going on. And I guess when we look at Simpson Grierson, because they're sort of in the middle, because they're already sort of in a position of being, advisors to a couple of the councils. And so when we said, well, if does have to be some independent advice, it's probably Central Districts Water should be the one that has to do that.
Thanks, colleagues. Mayor Smith?
The water service delivery plan, thank you, which some of our colleagues were quoting at council the other day, and some of the numbers are not, bearing in mind for Palmerston North, our Nature Calls wastewater plant. This has got old numbers in it. Is that going to be updated at any stage?
Yeah, good question. So I guess it's very hard to update formally the water services delivery plan. You would have to go through quite a process. So that's just the way it's been designed. It was a statement at a point in time, and it included things straight out of the LTPs at that point in time. So I get your point.
But the comms out there for some of the non-believers and those that want to take pot shots at this organisation, I'm just thinking of the reputation and potential comms going forward. There's some extremely out of date stuff in here, like for instance, nearly 550 million for a wastewater plant, which is what we built for probably less than half of that. So how are we going to cure that problem? Is that a comms thing?
I think how you cure the problem is the process that we're going through now to develop the water services strategy. So, not a lot you can do about the fact that water service delivery time represented a view at the point in time. We've already talked today about things around. We've moved on for that. There's already a number of assumptions we've already worked out weren't that great. Digital systems, as an example. But I think when we get the water services delivery plan, it'll show a new 10-year view around capital. And I think so. What's happening now is working with the ops work streams. You've got, the council staff are already in there. They're sort of updating the numbers. So in team's nodding good, but yeah, so it'll be updated through there and
Okay, my own comment would be that needs to be publicised quite clearly, because it is getting thrown in our faces that this is unaffordable. This was going to balloon out. You're going to have 5 times the cost. The reality is that there will be extra cost, but it's not nearly going to be what's been quoted.
Sure.
But they keep quoting this, and that's the problem. Yeah. Sorry, I'm going into comments. I shouldn't. Sorry.
Chris, you said, can I just point a clarification? You said when we've got the works, the water service delivery plan, you meant the water services strategy.
So water service delivery
Yes.
plan, which is what
Yes.
Grant's got. When we've got
Yep.
water services strategy,
Yes.
that's what we're working on. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
You said when you said when we got the water service
Sorry.
delivery plan, it was the
Thank you
water
for the
service
clarification.
strategy. Yeah, which the
Too
time
many
frame,
acronyms.
the time frame for that is a draft of that before the end of the year back here, with formal approval before the 1st of the 30th of June, but with fingers crossed it could be before that. The lion's share of the work on that to be done before the end of the year. Thank you. I just wanted that clarified. Mayor Andy.
Now, Mayor Grant, I would have thought that from a comms point of view, that you'll be adopting your annual plan before the end of June, presumably, and that would give you the opportunity to deal with your comms internally at that stage, because the entity won't kick in until 2027, and just do it as though you're still in charge.
Colleagues, any further questions or discussion? Colleagues, I started probably a little too informally in the sense that on the basis that we would note this report. It's a really important, substantial report, as the discussion has highlighted. We're incredibly grateful to Chris and the entire team and to the chief executives to be here and to have all in important ways to have contributed that. I think it's important actually that we move and second the resolution that's in front of us, that the committee formally receive as a merely noting. Once we've done that, as a consequence of that, in terms of the minutes from this meeting, the discussion, the question and answer, which I think has been incredibly helpful, will move from just question and answer and points of technically under the standing orders, probably points of clarification. It'll move into commentary, and I think that's appropriate. And I'd like to be able to set the benchmark that rather than just noting that we formally receive this report, considering its importance and the energy and work that's been put in, and the time that we've had with Chris to be able to delve deeper into this really important question. So I move that the committee formally receive the transition update from the chief executives presented on the 26th of June 26. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Mayor Smith. And all those in favour of receiving? Thank you, unanimous. I appreciate that, colleagues. Thank you. Colleagues, we're on to, this brings us to, if I'm not incorrect, our work schedule on item 10, which I think is on the very last page. In fact, it's at least on my copy, it's the back page of the hard copy that I've got here, a hard copy of the booklet of the board documents here, and it is a recommendation that the Joint Committee shareholders receive its work schedule dated 26th of June 26. So that I will move and second that. Let's do that now before we go into any questions. So I move. Do I have a seconder that this be received? Thank you, Mayor Andy. Any discussion? It's through out to the 4th of December. I note very much Katie's comments about some aspects of the chief executive's document that we've just discussed, and as to the sequencing and what would come here and what wouldn't. I think there's some clarity in terms of those governance responsibilities that were in the document before, and there will highly likely be amendments through of this work plan as we proceed to our next meeting, which is on the 7th of August. Mayor Andy.
The only comment I make there around timeframes is that you've said that the appointment, Chris Dryberg has said that the appointment of the chief executive is imminent. There have been interviews listed, etc. I would presume that the new chief executive would want the opportunity at the earliest time to be able to meet with us.
I assume so as well. There may be the need for us to stand up a meeting within the public notice timeframes that is extraordinary to these 7th of August, 4th of September, 4th of December. The 4th of September to the 4th of December, considering the amount of work that we've been getting through since February, seems an inordinate period of time not to have a meeting. And I would not be surprised if we have one or two that are slotted into there. So stand ready, team. Stand ready. Have moved that. So that's moved and seconded. All those in favour? Thank you. So received. Thank you very much, in particular, Mayor Burney and Councillor Jennings, for your hospitality of hosting us here in the Hora Whenua. And thank you very much to Grayson and the team for your manakiing us in your fine establishment. We very, very much appreciate it. Thanks to Hannah. Thanks to the establishment team. Are you still called the establishment team? I'm not sure what you're still called. Yes, you're still called the establishment team. And the chief executives. We appreciate your attendance today and your expertise and skills. Members of the public and those who are joining us either in the gallery or online, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, is there any final points that I have missed or items that we need to discuss or anything that we need to note before we wrap the meeting up? We're not looking forward to Danielle being away again, but we are looking forward to seeing you next, Di. Does that make sense? Di, thank you so much. We're really grateful for your time as the alternate. It's always a tough gig for the alternates. And Di, I'm aware that you actually came and sat in our last meeting in preparation for this. To get one up to speed when you're an alternate for anybody on this committee is actually quite a monumental feat. For that potentially only to be one meeting for a few months. So thank you very much, and we do look forward to seeing Danielle back. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I draw the meeting to a close at 11:28 a.m. Enjoy your weekend. Stay safe, stay warm, and enjoy your families. Oh, and a karakia. Thank you. Sorry, karakia. Tina. Thank you very much, Hayden. I appreciate that. Everyone, travel safe. Go